So good morning everyone, welcome to the first lesson of Specialist Maths for Term 2. I noticed that some of you have already had a look at this PowerPoint and a few of you have already attempted the exam for this week. You have unlimited attempts for those exams, so if you had a go, and I noticed most of you only got 30 out of 50, if you can have another go at it after you've gone through the 3 lessons, see if you can get 50 out of 50. It'll give you a good idea of how you are going. So the learning goal for this first lesson is learning how to define the domain and the range of different functions. So first thing I'd like you to do, just checking in, so if you can do this at the top of your notes, it's worthwhile you keeping track. Okay, so in the eLearn, I put up a Word document for how I would like you to have your notes. If you are having notes, if you're handwriting notes, I would recommend that you download the Microsoft Outlook app on your phone. Just take a photo of your notes and then email it to me on that. That's probably the easiest way to get me your notes if you are handwriting them. However, if you're writing them in a Word document, then obviously just save it, email it to me. Okay, so the first thing we need to make sure is we know exactly what a function is. So our relation is just y equals something x or a equals something b, just the relationship between 2 variables. A function is important in that it's got an independent and a dependent variable, and that there is only one dependent variable, so only one y value for every dependent value, so x value. So if you think about it, with a straight line, there's only ever one y value for each x value. For all of your quadratics, there is only one y value for each x value. For some relations, and I'll show you a couple later, there is more than one y value for an x value. Those we do not consider functions, like this one here. So see this one here, for the x value of 5, there are 2 different y values. Therefore, relation 2 is not a function. Okay, so what we're looking at is the domain and the range of our functions. So the domain is every possible x value. Okay, so if you can plot in any of these values into your function, your formula, you'll be able to get it to work. So you'll output real y values. So I'll show you an example in a second where there's some x values you can't plug in and get a real value. Remember that any number that is not real is imaginary. So as soon as you start getting imaginary numbers, you do not get it to work. So the denominator of a fraction cannot be 0. So if you divide by 0, you get undefined, which is positive and negative infinity. You cannot do that. You can also not have the square root of a negative. As soon as you have the square root of a negative, that then becomes imaginary, because -1 is the imaginary number I. You just can't get that to work. So as long as the denominator is not 0 and any square roots are positive, you're pretty much good. So the range is just the total number of y values. Okay, I've just paused it while I had a bunch of students walking by my room. Okay, so as long as we can submit any x value into here, what we end up getting as y is our range. So let's have a look at what exactly that looks like. Okay, so this this function here, or it's a relation, we first need to see, is it a function? Does it have two y values for one x value? And you can see here it doesn't. Okay? So for -4, -3, -2, -1, yada, 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 up to infinity, there is only one y value. So therefore it's a function. So let's have a look at the domain. Because we have a square root here, whatever's in here cannot be negative. Okay? So x can be 0. 0 plus 4 is 4. You can square root of 4, no problem. X can be -4. -4 plus 4 is 0. Square root of 0 is just 0. So you can see here when x is -4, y is 0. But x cannot be -5 because -5 plus 4 is -1, and the square root of -1 is not a real number. So that's why our function just stops. Okay, and it does continue up here for up to infinity. So our domain, x cannot be less than -4, so x is greater than or equal to -4. And because y cannot be negative, because you can't have a negative of a square, you can't have a square root and it be a negative, so y is 0 greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so the best way to do this is actually to graph it. But if you have an understanding of some simple formulae like the quadratics that we've been working with, you should be able to you should be able to predict what the domain and range are without any issue. Okay, so let's have a look here. So we have 6 questions here. And what I want you to do in your own notes is to identify whether or not these are functions, what the range is, and what the domain is. So these little circles here, we use circles to denote where a graph finishes. So this graph does not go beyond this circle. If you don't have a circle, then you just assume that that graph goes up to infinity. So this, for example, this graph 1 will just continue going up like that to infinity. So what we need to do, have a look at this. Does our relation have more than one y value for each x value? And you can see here it does not. So this is a function. When we look at what the domain is, well, the domain, if we look here, that is 1. Y equals 1. Oh, sorry, domain. X-axis, you can see here, x equals 3 here. So the line does not continue further down this way, so x cannot be greater than 3. So you would say x is less than or equal to 3. And the range. So you can see here, like I was saying before, on the y-axis, this circle is y equals 1. So the graph is greater than or equal to 1. That's what it just continues up here to infinity. So an example here of something that is not a function is here, question 4. If we do a vertical line test, you can see that for -4, x equals -4, y equals -1 or 1. There's an x value with 2 y values, therefore this is not a function. We can look at the domain and range of this relation though. So the domain, it continues out here to infinity, but it does not get less than -5. So you'll say that the domain is less than or equal to -5. And the range does not go below -2. So you say that the range is greater than or equal to -2. Okay. So I'd like you to have a look at that. Now, before I move on to some of the writing tasks, I've also included these ck12.org links in our week 1 session. This will go through how to find the domain and range of each function. If you're having trouble, please have a look at this. There's some really good methods and some good questions in this. We can have a look through here. Show how this works. Okay. This gives you an idea. This is basically an interactive textbook, so I would recommend that you have a look at it. It's pretty worthwhile. Where are we? PowerPoint. Okay. So each of these lessons, I'm going to be asking you to do a write that essay task. So if you just pause the video and have a go at writing this in either your book or your Word document. So you have X values and Y values, and I want you to write what do you know to be true about this situation, and how do you know that? Okay, so I want you to have a go at that. I want you to use at least one W start sentence. So that is a sentence that's starting with while, whilst, whereas, words like that. So if you can have a go at that, there's no real word count, no need to do over 150 words. I know some of you wrote an actual essay towards the end of last term, no need for that. So only do about 5 minutes of writing. Okay, and once you have done that, I'd like you to have a read of this paragraph here, and this is a practice in categorizing information. So reading a piece of text and identifying the important information, and then being able to create a for and against argument. So in 2006, the IAU voted to change the rules about what constitutes a planet. As a result, Pluto, which was the smallest, coldest, and generally most distant planet from the Sun, no longer qualifies. It does orbit the Sun, and it does have enough gravity to force it into a spherical shape. But, and here's the problem, the third criterion, it does not dominate its neighbourhood. In other words, Pluto still has lots of large objects orbiting around it. The IAU therefore created a new category, dwarf planet, into which Pluto now fits, along with 4 other celestial bodies in our solar system. So I'd like you to create a for and against, just dot points is fine, of Pluto being classified as a planet. So just have a go at that. This is all about identifying important information in a text. So to finish off, I'd like you to email me. In one sentence, compare and contrast the domain and the range of functions. So what is similar, what is different. So for to remind you, comparing, you're looking at the similarities as well as the differences, not just asking what is different between them. Okay, so that is the first lesson. Please, if you have any questions, pop into the, where are we? Week 1. Please pop into the discussion board. Term 2 content. There is a thread for week 1, lesson 1. If you have any questions, please post them here and I'll be answering them as soon as I see them. If you ask a question here, everyone else can see my answers as well, so it's going to be helping out the whole class. Okay, best of luck.